My name is Leslie Douglas. This presentation is an outline of the model developed to allow chemotherapy ordering and verification to be undertaken by a pharmacist working from home during the Covid-19 pandemic. To give a background to our location, on the right-hand side of this slide is a map of the United Kingdom. Dr Gray's is a district general hospital serving the residents of Moray, an area within NHS Grampian boundaries with a population of approximately 97,000. At Dr Gray's there is an outpatient chemotherapy unit where patients can receive systemic anti-cancer treatments close to home. The running of the chemotherapy unit is overseen by specialist Macmillan nurses, with the chemotherapy being prescribed by consultants predominantly based at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, 65 miles away. NHS Grampian cytotoxic facilities are located at ARI. A pharmacist based at Dr Gray's places orders for parenteral treatments with this unit. The treatments ordered are a mixture of dose-banded products and aseptically manufactured infusions and injections. The chemotherapy is then transported to Dr Gray's in the days following, dependent on the shelf life of the products. Dr Gray's has a full dispensary service, and it is here that all the take-home medicines are dispensed. These can include oral chemotherapy medications as well as supportive medications. Due to the distance between Dr Gray's and ARI, parenteral chemotherapy is not available to us on the day of ordering. This demands the ordering of chemotherapy in advance of the reporting of the patient's blood results. At the onset of the Covid-19 pandemic, the NHS was faced with many challenges, not least predicted staff absence. This necessitated many changes to working practice across the NHS, as the advice given was to work from home if it was at all possible to do so. Resultantly, we developed a method by which the clinical input to the satellite chemotherapy service provided by pharmacists at Dr Gray's could be delivered remotely by a pharmacist working from home. There were several IT challenges which needed to be overcome for remote working to be feasible. As a department, remote working had not previously been attempted for clinical services at Dr Gray's Hospital. The clinical input provided by the pharmacists supporting the chemotherapy clinic had always been provided from the pharmacy department within the hospital. It was identified that the majority of the pharmacist's time was spent in the department utilising computer-based clinical systems. With good communication between all parties and remote access to the required systems, it should be possible to undertake the role from any given location securely. The initial step in the process was to enable an NHS Grampian device to be able to be connected to the NHS Grampian network remotely. This was achieved by installing direct access connection on a Microsoft Surface. When connected to a secure Wi-Fi network at a remote location, this allowed the pharmacist to access the patient management system TrackCare, NHS email, Grampian intranet site, and NHS Grampian clinical guidelines. A web link had already been tested by some of the oncology and haematology consultants, which allowed the user to log into their account on Chemo Care. This was installed on the Surface, and the pharmacist was able to access all systems required from their home location securely. Chemo Care is the system used for prescribing and administration of chemotherapy. It would be through printed and signed Chemo Care prescriptions the pharmacist would ordinarily order treatments, by faxing these to the cytotoxic department at ARI or selecting for dispensing at Dr Gray's. There is no option on the current version of Chemo Care for electronic transmission of prescriptions. TrackCare is the system which is used for electronic patient records. Additionally, once the patient has received chemotherapy at the outpatient unit, the Chemo Care prescription is scanned onto their TrackCare records to ensure there is an electronic record available to all users. Strong communication links were pivotal to the method being a success. Email was already an established means of communication between pharmacists, the specialist nurses, and the oncologists and haematologists. This had typically been the choice for direct, non-urgent communication with these colleagues. Due to the previous method of ordering parenteral chemotherapy being reliant on a fax, a method had to be devised to enable receipt of the orders in the same manner at ARI without there being access to the fax machine in the pharmacist's home. It was possible to add the fax machine at ARI as a network printer to the list of printers on the device. The printer in Dr. Gray's dispensary was already available on the device as a network printer. As ordered and dispensed prior to blood results being reported, it is vital to ensure there is documentation of the pharmacist having checked these results before any chemotherapy is handed over to the outpatient unit for administration. The technician based at Dr. Gray's Hospital is then able to assemble the component parts of the chemotherapy to release it to the unit for administration to the patient. At the outset of the COVID pandemic, NHS Grampian brought forward the rollout of Microsoft Teams to all devices. This has enabled instant messaging, along with video and audio calls and team meetings. The technicians and pharmacist formed a chat, which is used for effective communication of information between each other regards any process issues. The following 3 slides give a schematic view of the full process which has been devised over this period. Consultants based at ARI review the patient and prescribe the systemic anti-cancer treatments. Specialist nurses are responsible for scheduling the patients and ensuring best use of the chair spaces available on the unit. At the beginning of each week, they will email out a list of patients due to attend for chemotherapy to all the consultants and the pharmacy team. From this list, the pharmacist will, once each cycle has been confirmed by the consultant, review the treatment assigned to that patient and communicate with the consultants any amendments required. BOPA, the British Oncology Pharmacy Association, and NHS Grampian have standards by which the pharmacist must review all SACT treatments. Once the pharmacist is satisfied that the chemotherapy is appropriate, the option to print the prescription is available in Chemo Care. When completing this task from the department, this prints to the dispensary. However, a workaround had to be found to allow the addition of a pharmacist's signature to the prescription. To avoid the pharmacist having to print excessive amounts of confidential waste, it was possible to choose print to PDF as the printer option. This generated the Chemo Care prescription in PDF format, which could be annotated for allergies and a stamp added to indicate the pharmacist had approved the dispensing of the prescription. It was then possible to print the PDF of the parenteral medications to cytotoxins at ARI and the PDF of oral and supportive medications to the dispensary at Dr. Gray's. Both the parenteral medications and the take-home medications are then suitably stored in a designated quarantine area in the dispensary while awaiting a final verification check by the pharmacist. Due to both the potential distance between Dr. Gray's and the patient's home and poor transport links, patients have the blood tests taken by their primary care provider. These blood results are processed by labs at ARI and reported on Track Care. Macmillan nurses will then review the blood results alongside toxicity scoring of the patient and authorise the treatment on Chemo Care if they are fit to proceed. The pharmacist then separately reviews the results and concludes the final step of the verification process. On occasion, it may be necessary to refer back to the prescribing oncologist, and this communication will be made by email, unless urgent, in which case the pharmacist phones the switchboard at ARI to be put through to the oncologist concerned. To demonstrate that verification has been completed and that the chemotherapy may proceed, a final PDF is generated in a similar method to the first one. The PDF is stamped and annotated by the pharmacist before being printed to the dispensary at Dr. Gray's. The technician can then accuracy check doses and expiry dates to ensure treatments can leave the quarantine area and be administered to the patient. As a result of the development of this new model of working, it has been demonstrated that it's possible for a pharmacist working from home to deliver a clinical pharmacy service to the outpatient chemotherapy clinic without compromising any of the support offered to the unit. This change in working processes has had no direct impact on the quality of clinical pharmacy service provided to the chemotherapy patients attending the outpatient unit. Through full implementation of remote access, it has been possible for the pharmacist working from home to utilise all the clinical systems they would while working in the department. No excess paperwork is generated, patient confidentiality is maintained, and this does not breach any of